What's up guys, it's me Kaluchi back with a new video, and today I will be talking about how to carry with Ezreal. I've been playing Ezreal for quite a while now and I've got quite the idea of how to carry with this guy. At least I think I do, and I want to share my thoughts and opinions with you guys in order to get the most out of this champion. So let's dive right into the video. I will be splitting this video up in certain parts, so you can just skip ahead to the part that you want to hear about. I would recommend, if you're not an Ezreal main, obviously then you wouldn't watch this, but if you're not too familiar with Ezreal, I wouldn't skip anything and just watch the whole video. So let's first start off with understanding the win condition, because this is the first thing that you will be doing when the game starts. You can actually do this pre-game as well when you're in the loading screen. So all you have to do is look at the champions on your side of the team and on the enemy side of the team. And why this is so important is because you need to adapt every game. You cannot play every game the same with Ezreal, because Ezreal on itself is a scaling champion. That means that he needs items, he needs levels in order to get strong. So it doesn't just mean that you can fight on the same time period as the previous game just because you got fed or something. Also, you need to look at your support. The support plays a very big role, just with any AD carry, but especially with Ezreal as well. If you have a very passive support, don't try to make plays with Ezreal in the laning phase, especially if the enemies are very aggro. Just accept that your laning phase, this game, is not the best, is not optimal, so you just need to take a step back. However, if you got a very aggressive support, for example Thresh, Leona, who really needs to engage in order to do stuff, then you can adapt once again, maybe play a little bit more aggressive, position a little bit better. But if you're with the Janna, for example, or Soraka, of course, you can play those champions aggressive as well, but you know, their kit is not meant to go all in right away, just like Leon or something. Then you will play a little bit passive. You can also choose to get, for example, if you have a Soraka and you're Ezreal, you can choose to get poke in order for you to farm, which is worth it because Soraka can just heal you back up. Just be careful with all-ins. Also, what's important is your team. If your team is ultra late game, if you got a full scaling comp with a lot of tanks or mid laners who skill very well, then you shouldn't force a lot of stuff early game. You just need to stall out the game. Just wait. You're also a scaling champion, so just wait it out and see if you can do something with your team later on. So the next one is accept defeat. And what I mean with accept defeat is I already talked a little bit about it in the first part where we were talking about understanding the win conditions. But Ezreal is not the strongest laner, and this is because his main damaging ability gets blocked by minions. So that means whenever you try to trade and they're positioning well, it's really hard for you to trade or to maximize your damage output onto them. Doesn't mean that he's weak in the laning phase, it just means that he's not the strongest. And there are a lot of stronger AD carries, of course, in trading. For example, Misfortune or Draven, just for an example. Actually Caitlyn as well. They can just farm behind their own minions and harass Ezreal whenever they want. However, because Ezreal has this Q of his, which is very long range, you're one of the safest AD carries, especially with that E of yours as well. So just accept defeat. Even if you miss out on farm, keep on queuing those minions. Don't try to force anything, and please don't get tilted when they outfarm you. Okay? It's only normal to get behind in League of Legends. You cannot win 100% of your laning phase, otherwise you wouldn't be in that elo, right? So therefore just accept defeat. Tell yourself, okay, they may have won this laning phase, but I know that when I get my 2 or 3 items, I will crush them. Farm up, don't die, that's the most important thing. Do not die. Do not go back, do not miss too much farm, do not miss too much EXP, because that will get you behind and the enemies further ahead. And once we accepted defeat, we need to look at comebacks. And comebacks are really, really possible with Ezreal. It's hard. And a comeback when you're too far behind is really hard and almost not possible. But what I'm trying to say here is, you're in the laning phase, you may have 70 farm, the enemy AD carry might have 110, for example, at 12 minutes. You're behind quite a bit, but as long as you don't die, the enemy is not ahead too much. So for that reason, there is still a comeback possible. Now, if you went 0-5 and the enemy had 10 kills, then a comeback is almost not possible. So keep that in mind. Ezreal has the damage compared to other AD carries in the late game to always make a comeback, okay? He has that burst, he has that DPS, So do not forget that you can always make a comeback. The most important thing is getting your items, getting your experience, and positioning well enough in team fights. So here comes another thing that I want to talk about, and that's itemization and why that is so important. Every game is different. Every game, the champions are different, right? Your team, the enemy team, everything is, it's not fixed. So for that reason, you need to buy other items every game. Now you can say, this build has the highest win rate, I'm going for this 24/7. Statistically, this is the best. Not true, actually, not true. Maybe in your average game, that's the highest win rate. But if you really want to look to get the most out of your champion, you need to look at every game as a blanco sheet that gets filled, with the enemies. If that makes any sense, right? So for example, if they got assassins, you might not want to build Luden's Echo 3rd item or Revolver, Hextech Swimblade, but you might want to go for Zhonya's, right? You maybe miss out on some damage or sustain, but you will survive the team fight, and therefore you will deal more damage. And they will not focus you anymore as much, because they know you got that Zhonya's. For example, if they have a lot of AP burst and not quite assassins, but just a lot of burst, for example, Xerath pokes a lot or something, they might want to go for Maufdemo Mortius, right? Mithril Scimitar, those kind of items as your 3rd or 4th item. So that's very important. You obviously have 2 core items. Those will be the Muramana and either Iceborne Gauntlet or Trinity Force. Those are your core. But after that, you really need to adapt every game on your 3rd, 4th, 5th item. You need to adapt based on the game. Do not forget that. The next part I want to talk about is power spikes. So Ezreal has a few power spikes in game, which you can abuse. Well, not abuse, but which you can use in your favor. Obviously, any champion in game has a certain power spike, and it's important to know when that power spike occurs in order to take full advantage of it. So I will be talking about all the little and big power spikes Ezreal will be having in game. Alright, so let's start off with this first B. Ezreal is one of the weakest AD carries when he's first recalling and gets his first item, because that will be the Tear of the Goddess. And that means that when you have Tear of the Goddess, the enemy usually has a pickaxe. He will outtrade you almost every time. So what you have to keep in mind is, do not trade at that moment. Only try to poke when it's safe or when you have sustain in lane. So once again, if you have support that can sustain you, then you can go in for a trade. However, if they also have a sustain champion, then you might lose that trade. The second time, however, what I do is I get my Muramana, not the Sheen. And you might ask yourself, but hey, don't all Koreans buy Sheen 2nd item instead of Muramana Rush? Well, that is true. But as you might know, I'm not Korean. No, just kidding. But the reason why I like to rush Muramana is because Muramana is actually the item that gives the most attack damage out of all the other items in game, especially on Ezreal, because he has a lot of mana. So let me explain. The first time you go back, you buy a Tear of the Goddess, which means you have 0 attack damage, right? So let's say you go back the second time, you get your Muramana. That item on itself gives 25 attack damage, right? But it also gives immediately 30 to 35 attack damage based on your mana. That means that you get around 50 to 60 attack damage with your first pack. Just imagine that. First time you went back, you had 0 AD and the enemy had a pickaxe. Now, all of a sudden, you get 50 to 60 attack damage. That's an immediate power spike that you have right there. Don't forget this. Once you have your Muramana, your damage increases by a whole lot. So that will be your first power spike in the laning phase. Now, your second power spike will be once you get your Sheen, but that will be a very small power spike. That just means that your poke is a lot stronger, and if you decide to go all in, that you are quite a bit stronger. After that, your second big power spike will be once you complete your second item. Now, I would suggest to buy Trinity Force if you really need the damage and all of the enemies are quite squishy. I would suggest Trinity Force if you're really far ahead and it's almost impossible to fall behind. Trinity Force is quite an expensive item and it takes quite up a lot of spots in your inventory. 3 spots and then you can finish it, right? And then it will take 1, of course. So if, for example, you go 4-0 in the laning phase and you're farming almost perfectly, then by all means go for a Trinity Force. Otherwise, I would recommend an Iceborne Gauntlet. And I would also recommend an Iceborne Gauntlet if the enemies have a lot of attack damage. Maybe assassins or, you know, heavy bruisers that will probably jump on you, even though you go 4-0 or whatever. So once you have your second item, may it be Iceborne, may it be Trinity, you have a very big power spike as well. After that, based on the game, if you buy a Zhonya's, for example, like I said earlier, you will not have a very big power spike. However, if you go for X6 Gunblades or Luden's Echo, maybe Blade of the Ruined King, those will count as a small power spike as well, because it's your third item as an AD carry, and those are very important, especially offensive items. Those will give you power spikes. So if you have one of those 3 items, then yes, you will have another power spike. That was part 1, guys. This video is a lot longer than I expected. It's already above 10 minutes and I didn't really want to make it this long, but hey, what gives? I'm not gonna make a lot of these types of videos, so for this one time, you know, be sure to check out part 2 once I upload it as well. That will have more gameplay footage in it and more commentary on how to actually do some tricks in order to carry. And not so much information, theoretical information that I just gave. So more practical information. Yeah, so be sure to subscribe in order to see that video as well being uploaded this week. Catch you guys next time.